We're with Coach Boynton as we head down into the final week of the regular season for Oklahoma State. And, here we are. Could have easily won the last two. Bedlam, obviously the Sooners hit a very challenging shot at the end of the game. UCF, you had a 12-point lead in the first half, and then foul trouble caught up with you. And I'm sure that's the frustrating part of this. You're just a couple of plays away from sitting here on a big-time roll.
Yeah, and 12-point lead, and got a really good luck from one of our better shooters to go up 15. And we don't make it, and obviously the foul trouble became an issue over the course of the game. Javon being most notable, picking up his third foul in the first half certainly changed how we were able to approach the second half, even the start. But this is what you got to learn. You got to learn how to deal with all those elements as a young team, and we're still learning those things. Our guys are still competing hard. We got to play a little bit smarter. Got to adjust to the whistles of the officials when we see it's being called fairly tight. But those are the lessons you go through with young guys, and they'll be better for this down the road.
Yeah, the UCF game is so unique. I mean, it seemed like early though, the flow of that game was probably more like what you wanted. John Michael Wright scored 10 of your first 11 points, and then as the game wore on, it took on more of the physical, for lack of a better description, ugly look that UCF wants. That's how they play. That's how they thrive.
No question. It's how they've won the games that they have won in conference play so far, and it's certainly put them in better position than we are because we're just not as prepared for that kind of game. And we've got to be a team that can adjust from game to game to try to figure that out. Saturday's game was so much different. Free-flowing offense, less whistles being blown, a lot of guys being able to get to where they wanted to go offensively. Yesterday was a much more physical game, but called a lot tighter. And so, I want to continue to encourage these guys that, they're getting better. It was just a couple possession game right there at the end. We got the ball down one and get a great look from Jamiron on a driving kick. Didn't go in, but defensively we got to continue to search and find ourselves to be in a little bit more sturdier position.
Is it at all easier when you're going through something like this to have a young team that doesn't really know any better? They know that they're improving, so they're hearing that from you. They're seeing the results, but at the same time, they don't have the experience of maybe looking at things from a negative standpoint. If you keep the message positive, then hopefully they stay positive.
Yeah, that's a big key, because obviously as frustrating as the results are, because we live with those as coaches, the fact of the matter is these guys are continuing to show up every day with really good attitudes, seeking help. And that's our job, is to help them as much as we can, to show them the things that we can control better and do better. Rebounding, free throw blockout. We had a couple of those last night that were critical. Timely turnovers or missed free throws. We had a couple of those late in the second half. And then some of the things that are out of your control, you just got to be in the best position that they don't really impact how the outcome of the game is.
John Michael Wright, as I mentioned, scored 10 of your first 11 points, ends up with a career high. Early in conference play, his role was limited. He was sort of on the fringe, if you will, of the rotation, and he's really turned it around. He's had a great run, and of course, he was off to a great start against UCF.
Yeah, he's played as consistently well as anybody we have in terms of once he got himself back in the groove. And a lot of it is shot making. Young guys, and he's not a young guy, but he's still a younger player as a college kid, tend to ride the wave of their offense and the shots going in. And that's really what he's done his whole career. He was a scorer for 3 years at High Point. He's come in here and been a double-digit scorer for 2 years, and certainly somebody that we need to continue to preach the positive message as we go into the last week of the regular season and talk about just the opportunity that arises when you get to Kansas City, that everybody's got the same chance to take care of the games that are in front of them and try to build some momentum and kind of see where you can take it towards the finish line.
Eric Daly's had consecutive games in double figures. In fact, he had a career high of 20 points against Oklahoma. What's changed with him? Because it looked like he was in a little bit of a funk, for lack of a better description, but the last two games, really even going back to Cincinnati, last 3 games, it's looked a lot different for him.
Well, I think he's kind of taken the pressure off of himself. I think early on he was feeling pressure of having to do a certain thing, or stat line having to look a certain way, and now he's just allowing himself to get lost in the game and really taking what the defense is giving him. In Oklahoma, I thought it was his best game of seeing what was available and trying to attack that. When the big guy was guarding him, he came out on the perimeter a little bit more, tried to play up the dribble. When they switched a little guy on him, because they switched 4 and 5 sometimes, he went into the post and tried to figure out if they were going to double team him, which they didn't do a ton of. But I like his maturity as the season's gone along. We got to get him a little bit more physical in terms of playing against bigger guys defensively, because you kind of offset the advantage you have if you don't present the physicality in terms of defending and rebounding. But going to be a really, really good player, and certainly looking forward to having him for a full off season this year with this data to watch with him, and another year of understanding how to attack his body and get in better shape, because he's certainly got great potential.
How much better is your passing and cutting now versus, let's say, 6 weeks ago?
Oh, man. I mean, not even that long. I mean, it's been a steady progression. It was something we saw as possible early on, but with guys who haven't had to rely on passing to score as a team, there was a little bit of reluctance to just go all in with it early in the season. We turned the ball over a little bit more than we needed to and shot a low percentage. Well, we're shooting a lot better because the ball's moving better, and we're getting better looks because we're putting the defense in a tougher spot. So it's something that we're encouraged by as we go into the offseason, as we come into the last stretch, that we can continue to get better at with this group, a good core of those guys that could be playing together again next year. And I look forward to seeing them how they translate that from the in-season to off-season in terms of their training, and then into the next season where they have a chance to put it on display again.
So next up is Texas on the road. The Longhorns a bit up and down, for lack of a better description, but the bad news is you feel like that's probably the best game they played all year. They beat Texas Tech. They were up almost 30 early in the second half.
Played really, really well as they played probably since early in the non-conference, where even then they were up and down. But they got off to a really, really good start. Shot the ball extremely well. Max A. Smith, who was kind of in a little bit of a slump, shot the ball really well. But Dylan Dessou was probably, because of the up and down season, not getting as much credit as he deserves for his consistency and the way he's playing on the offensive end. Certainly a matchup problem for us at the 5, but something we'll have a game plan for. But we know that they're fighting for the NCAA tournament lives, and we have a chance to go in there and play spoiler a little bit, and we'll try to do our best to give ourselves a chance to win the game.
Do they bring anything unique that you haven't seen up to this point that's different?
Well, Dessou is probably the biggest thing. He's a true 3-level scorer for a 5-man, and we don't see that very often. Hunter Dickinson does it a little bit different. He does it with force and some skill, but it's not like he can do it off the dribble. Well, Dylan Dessou can also drive you. He can help his other teammates get shots. And so you got to really figure out if you're going to double team him, or which one of your matchups you want him to try to exploit, whether it be going inside against a smaller guy like Q, or bringing a bigger guy like Garrison outside and trying to make him make plays off the dribble.
It's the Cowboys in Texas on Saturday, and then back home for senior night in Stillwater. We'll talk to you next week.